Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into one of the coolest toolkits out there for building modern websites and apps, the MERN Stack. Ready to see how it all works? Let's get right into it. So, have you ever used a really slick app and thought, man, how did they even build this? It can seem kind of magical, right? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to treat this whole thing like we're architects and construction workers, drawing up a blueprint to build a web app from scratch. All right, so what is this MERN thing anyway? Well, the name itself is an acronym for the four big technologies we're going to be talking about: MongoDB, Express.js, React, and Node.js. But here's the real kicker, the secret sauce, if you will. They all speak the same language, JavaScript. That's huge. It means you can build the entire application front to back, top to bottom, all with one language. Super powerful stuff. Okay, first things first. Every construction project, whether it's a skyscraper or a website, starts with what people can actually see. You know, the walls, the windows, the design. In our world, we call that the front end. It's literally everything you, the user, see and click on in your browser.
And building this front end really breaks down into three simple steps. First, we lay out the skeleton, the structure. Then we make it look good. We paint the walls. And finally, we add the electricity to make things happen.
So let's dig into those first two parts. HTML, that's our steel frame. It's the bare bones of the website. We use these things called semantic tags, which are basically just labels telling the browser, hey, this part's the main header, or this is a blog post. Then comes CSS. CSS is the fun part. It's the interior designer. It adds all the paint, chooses the furniture, and hangs the pictures. It also uses amazing tools like Flexbox and Grid to make sure our site looks fantastic whether you're on a giant monitor or your tiny phone screen.
All right, so we've got a beautiful but static building. What's missing? The power. That's where JavaScript comes in. It's the wiring, the electrical system. It's what makes the light switches work. It manages all the data and uses what we call event listeners to, listen for you to do something. So when you click a like button or fill out a form, that's JavaScript jumping into action and making something happen.
Now, basic JavaScript is awesome, don't get me wrong, but imagine trying to wire a whole skyscraper with just a bunch of loose wires. It would get super messy, right? As our apps get bigger and more complex, we need a smarter, more organized system. We need a smart home system, if you will. And for that, we bring in the R in MERN, React. So what's React's superpower? It's all about components. Instead of building one massive, monolithic user interface, React lets you break everything down into small, independent, and reusable pieces. Think of them like Lego bricks. You build a little search bar brick, a little button brick, maybe a user profile brick, and then you just snap them all together to create your final masterpiece. It's so much cleaner and more efficient. To make these little Lego bricks work, we need to understand a few core ideas. First up is JSX. It looks a little weird at first, but it's basically a way to write what looks like HTML right inside your JavaScript. It's awesome. Then you have props. Think of props as the instruction manual you give to a component. It's how you tell it what to do or what information to show. And finally, there's state. State is a component's own personal memory. It's how that search bar remembers what you just typed into it. And to manage that internal memory and other cool side effects, React gives us these special tools called hooks. You'll hear about them all the time. The two big ones you absolutely have to know are useState. That's the hook that literally gives a component state or memory. And then there's useEffect. This one lets your component do things when something happens, like fetching fresh data from the internet right when it first shows up on the screen. Okay, let's take a step back. We've built this gorgeous, interactive, smart home for our users. The buttons click, things light up, it's great. But where's all the information coming from? Where is the user's profile data stored? For that, we need to leave the pretty front end and go down into the basement, to the power plant of our application, the back end. Yeah, the back end is like the machine room, the server room, the plumbing, all the stuff you never see but that makes the whole building actually work. This is where the servers live, where the massive database is kept, and where all the important business logic happens. The user never sees it, but without it, nothing works. It's the brains of the whole operation. So how do these two parts, the beautiful front end and the powerful back end, actually communicate? They talk through something called an API. It's like a waiter in a restaurant. Your front end, the customer, says, hey, I'd like to get the user's profile data. The request goes to the kitchen, our back end, First, middleware. Think of this as the bouncer or security guard, checks to make sure you're allowed to ask for that. Then a controller, the chef, gets the data, puts it on a plate, and the server sends it right back out to your table. Simple as that. And what's running this whole backend engine? That's the N and E in MERN, Node.js and Express.js. Now, Node.js was an absolute game changer. For the longest time, JavaScript could only live inside a web browser. Node was the technology that broke it free and let it run on a server. It was huge. And Express is a framework that sits on top of Node and just makes life easier. It gives us a simple way to set up all those waiter routes for handling requests, like getting data, posting new info, and so on.
Okay, so we're getting and sending data, but where is this data actually stored? In a database, of course. And there are really two main flavors. You've got your SQL databases, which are super structured. Think of a perfectly organized filing comment with neat little rows and columns. Then you have NoSQL databases. These are more like a pile of flexible documents in a folder. They're way less rigid. And interestingly, they store data in a format that looks almost identical to the JavaScript objects we've been using all along. And that brings us to the M in MERN, MongoDB. You guessed it, it's a NoSQL database. It's super popular with JavaScript developers because it just feels right. You're working with JavaScript on the front end with React, JavaScript on the back end with Node, and now you're storing your data in a format that looks just like JavaScript. It's perfect. To help our Express server talk to MongoDB, we use a handy tool called Mongoose. It just helps us enforce a little bit of structure on our data so things don't get too chaotic.
Wow. Okay. We've come a long way. We've poured the foundation with HTML and CSS. We've built this incredible, interactive smart home with React. And we've hooked it all up to a powerful backend engine room. So now, let's step back, take a breath, and look at the whole blueprint, the grand design. Let's see how you become a true full-stack architect. And there you have it. This is the whole shebang. On the front end, you've got React handling what the user sees and does. In the middle, you have your backend API, powered by Node.js and Express, managing all the logic. And in the back, you have MongoDB, your data warehouse. Each piece has its job. But the real magic, the reason the MERN Stack is so popular, is that single thread running through it all, JavaScript. That consistency makes the whole process smoother, faster, and just better. So, there it is. You now have the complete blueprint. You understand the architecture for building a powerful, modern web application from the ground up. The plans are in your hands. So the only real question left is, what are you going to build?